guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am I. My name is still Joshua Ansley, and today I want to talk about desire, right? In my class I was saying I was keeping it PG, but now I'm not gonna fucking keep it PG. We're gonna talk about desire. But really, so I've had issues in my journey trying to understand desire, because when I understand working with the philosophy, I started to hear that the desires are the root of all my suffering, right? So it's a big thing in Buddhist philosophy and in the Vedantic philosophy that I study, which have pretty much the same roots, that this desire is the cause of suffering. So I didn't really understand at all, because they're still having a desire towards a higher desire, even towards self-realization or God realization, then is still a desire, right? So I was confused by this seeming paradox, right? And the biggest problem that I found in my spiritual journey, one of the biggest problems, if not the biggest problem, has been black and white thinking, right? And the world is very black and white. And it's just, I mean, the world thinks in very black and white ways, like the typical way of being. The world is not black and white, though. It is very gray. It's gray as this freaking hair, right? And so it can actually coexist in that way. But really, and I do understand the concept of desire being the cause of all the suffering, but in actuality, it's not the desire that's the cause of the suffering. In my perspective, it is the ignorance that is the cause of suffering. Now, desires can be classified as a modification of ignorance, or an offshoot or a result of ignorance, right? So specifically, ignorance of the fact that at our core, we are that whole, complete, divine, limitless, expansive source, that at our divine nature, that if we have that understanding, then there really is no desire, because you are complete and whole and fulfilled, right? But it's ignorance of that causes the desires. And there are desires on many levels, right? And I want to be clear that it is not a bad thing to have desires. I don't care what your desire is. On a very basic level, it's understanding that if you have a desire, it's if it rules your life, then it is a desire. If you are attached to the object of that desire, right? So the Vedantic philosophy talks about attachment being anything without which you would not be okay. Right? So if you have a desire for something, first of all, it's desire that really propels most of us into action in this world. And that's okay. Right? There's great things that happen out of desire. So it's not desire as a whole is a bad thing. On a basic addiction level, if you are powerless over this thing and you can't be without it, then that becomes a serious problem. The desire is very much located in the second chakra, Svadhisthana. And it's when you have an imbalance in there, that's where addiction and things can happen, particularly even sexual addiction, just because all the desire is really tied up down there. But particularly sexual addiction, of course, that works right into that spot, right? I can't even see my hip. Right into that spot, right? Okay. So, but desire is what usually propels us forward into taking action in this world, and that's great. That's great, particularly if you can elevate your desires. And that's what I want to talk about, is understanding that there are different types of desires. There's physical desire, there's energetic desire, there's emotional desire, there's mental desire, intellectual desire, right? All these different desires. And as you elevate your desires, the lower ones drop off. So there is a conscious movement towards an elevation of desires. For example, when you are younger, you might love sweets, right? And that is more of a selfish desire just for you, like your physical, the sensation and the taste of that, and in the sense object of this sweet, right? And then when you grow up and have children, and there's one sweet left, the emotional satisfaction that you get from giving that sweet to your child is more satisfying than actually having the sweet. So you've elevated now to a higher desire, something not so base and physically oriented, but move into an emotional desire, right? And the satiation of that is more rewarding. Intellectual can be even more rewarding, right? So it's as you elevate the desires, you get into deeper and deeper spaces of understanding within yourself. Now, it's called svadharma in the philosophy. It is basically your purpose in this life, right? Your deepest desires. So many of us never really go past understanding how the mind works. First of all, a lot of the desires are in the mind. Not all of them, I would say, but a lot of them are, right? So your mind goes towards its likes, avoids its dislikes, goes towards pleasure, avoids pain, right? And so if you're having constantly all these different desires happening at different levels, they're going to push you in different directions, and that's how this battle happens inside of yourself. So for example, if you have a desire to be successful in your business, right? But you also have a desire to always be comfortable within yourself, right? Which is a natural thing. Like the mind has that desire to seek comfort and stability, and that's a normal thing too. But then it's that desire to be comfortable is going to push up against that desire for success, and then you have something bashing up against itself, and that's stopping you because of your countering desires, right? So understanding your desires and observing them on deeper levels, and understanding that you might have a desire to be comfortable, but actually the way to get into that comfort is to work through the discomfort, right? So these awareness of how these things work all work to actually coming into a fulfillment of your desires. And if you have an object, right, let's say this object right here, we'll take it into my chest so you can see, right, picture it there. And then this force is working on it. So this desire is working on this object, you, in this direction, right, to push you in this direction. And then you have another object, or another desire rather, pushing on you and this object in this direction to take you off in this direction. What happens is if you have both desires, both forces pushing on this object, then the object is actually going to be pushed. This is physics. Then it'll be pushed into a third direction, unlike either one of these two, right? So when you start to be aware of your desires, you have an infinite number of desires on physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, all these different levels, pushing you in all these different directions, and you end up going in a completely different direction than you ever imagined in the first place. So it's not very clear. And a lot of these desires are really pushing against each other, right? So ultimately, it is not a bad thing to have a desire. Like I've said, again, desires are not a bad thing. It's how you relate to the desire. And this is where we get into renunciation. And renunciation, I've done vlogs on before, sounds like a scary thing. Like to renounce, you have people, sannyasi they're called in Vedantic philosophy or in the yogic philosophy or Eastern philosophy. It's giving up everything. You have priests and nuns that, take vows of chastity and poverty, right? So that they're not going to have anything, and I'm not going to indulge in this space. And there's many different layers of looking at that, because when you get into a space of brahmacharya or taking a vow of chastity or something like that, there's different levels, and we're all at different levels, and it's not even better or worse. There's all different layers caked on. So if you're just renouncing and you're saying, I'm not going to do this thing, but you're fucking going crazy because you're not actually dealing with why and working through all that kind of stuff and understanding your desires and where they come from and all that work, then you're just going to be going crazy renouncing it. But another type of renunciation is renouncing your relationship to the object of your desire, so that you understand that this object of your desire is not going to complete you. It doesn't mean that you can't have a desire for it. It doesn't mean that you can't take action towards it. But you understand that it is not your completeness. It is not your higher power. It is not the thing that is going to make you better. That is going within. And what happens is, again, talking about that space of desirelessness, or that space beyond desire, or that space beyond the ignorance, because it is the ignorance of our divine nature and our wholeness and completeness at our core that turns us into the external world to fill that void that we have. So that's where this desire comes from. That's not even, again, this is not necessarily a bad thing, because your desire for self-realization is still a desire. It's elevating our desires. Your desire to be of service is still a desire, but it's a wonderful desire. It's better than just a shallow, selfish desire, which isn't necessarily bad either, because we do need to take care of ourselves. We do need to have those desires. Your body has a desire for food, right, so that you stay alive. Like these are valuable things that we have. It's when they rule you and your mind takes over and just is obsessed and compulsive about getting that desire, that's where the issue comes about. When you have an imbalance here in this chakra, and it's like, so the understanding that there is a space inside of you that is beyond the desires, right, will start to help even that knowledge, because if ignorance is the problem, if ignorance is the cause of suffering, then the solution is knowledge and awareness. not just a knowledge, and then you have an experience of it. And when you actually know that there is a space beyond all of these desires, you don't have to then have those desires ruling you. But it doesn't mean that you don't still necessarily have a desire for something and take action towards it, right? But even something higher, like a desire to be of service, if you really just want to be of service and you want to help the world and you don't even know why it is, really because it's trying to quell something in you to make you feel better because you have a desire to do that, when the world doesn't want your help or somebody doesn't need your help or somebody doesn't take your help, you will learn very quickly that being of service and just that desire to help is actually a selfish thing. So we can actually move into a space where understanding that there are three types of action. Action moving us towards, maybe even towards the gratification of some sort of desire. But when you have these three kinds of action and understand them, you'll see that there's the selfish action, which we are all aware of, right? That's something, I do something just to get something for myself. Without judgment, it's not a bad thing. It's just an observation, understanding that there is a selfish action and that you are trying to get something for yourself in a small contained, small self, right? And then there is unselfish action, which is beautiful, right? That is a space of service, being of service to other people, and really good service, as I've talked about, benefits both people. So if I take selfless action, unselfish action, then I am giving something and taking action to create something to help you and me, and everybody benefits, and I'm feeling better because of service, and it makes me feel better, and that's great and that's beautiful. But then there is the space of selfless action, which is coming from a space of, once you understand that you are whole, healed, and complete already, then you'll be able to give from a place of complete selflessness. So you're not actually even looking for any gain from it, because you can't possibly gain anything more because you have everything. You are whole, healed, and complete already. That is enlightened action. That's fucking like way out there. But understanding that it exists, and then it doesn't mean that you can't even have the objects of your desire, right? You may still want something. An enlightened person still wants a cup of coffee. But when they find out that there's no coffee, they're okay. But they're understanding that their body and their mind in these lower places, I don't say lower, but these denser places, still have desires, right? Then they can still take action towards that desire. And maybe it's a higher desire, right? As you build up into these higher places, the lower just dropped off. And when I was a child, I played with childish things. When I became an adult, I put those childish things away. You no longer want to play with toys like you were when you were a kid. Now you've got new toys, bigger toys, cars and houses and dildos, or whatever it is that you use, whatever your fancy toys are that you use now as adults, your adult toys, right? So you've now got these toys that you have, and the desire for those lower toys drop off, right? And as you get subtler and subtler and subtler and work into a space of your svadharma, so that you're working on deeper levels of your desire, of what you want to do in this world, you know, that's where you could start to really thrive. If you're working in your paradharma, if you're in a space that is against your purpose, and you've just gotten into business even though you should have been a yoga teacher, or vice versa. It's not about being a yoga teacher. If you got into teaching yoga and you should really be doing business, that's at your core, like this deeper desire, that's where you're going to thrive and be able to serve the most, is in business, then you shouldn't be a yoga teacher, right? And that's working against your deeper desire. So when you get past these desires for these worldly material things, which are not bad, but you're just getting deeper, it's in addition, and you get into these deeper desires, the rest of it starts to fall off, and you start to step into a flow. You start to step into a flow of deeper areas of yourself. And it's by understanding the nature of these desires, understanding yourself and your desires, why you want the things that you want, what is really compelling you into action. And that's when it comes down to those three places in action. It's that the selfless action is coming, not being propelled by a desire, right? It's not some sort of a desire that is going to fulfill that. So what actually takes you into action in this world? What makes you move? You know, and there's all sorts of modifications of desire. Talk about anger being a modification of desires. Anger is a modification as you have a desire and move towards it, something gets in the way of the way you think it should be. It could just be something you want, or even the way you think it should be. Like these tragedies and these awful things in the world. Of course, it's awful that it's that way. But the anger that you have about the injustice is really because of your lack of acceptance, because you want it to be a certain way, but it's not. It's just not. But that doesn't mean that you can't take action towards changing things in the world so that it's not that way. But you can take selfless action. You can take action without needing it to be a certain way in order for you to be okay. But if it's desire that pulls you forward into that, okay too. But understand that that is going to mess with your emotions when you get into a space where you can't get what you want. And that emotional response is what we're talking about here, is clearing out into something beyond our emotions, something deeper than that, into deeper layers of desire, and understanding our desires on deeper layers, and not judging ourselves for the desires that we have. If you want to boat, if you want to suck dick, whatever the hell it is that you want to do, allow yourself to understand why you do it. And when you acknowledge that and go deeper into that, your elevation will start to happen. You will elevate into higher desires. In Lakesha Lakin, I am you, you are me. Namaste. What? Too much?